The world is once again on fire, and this time the flames aren't just in Gaza but in the cities thousands of miles away. From Berlin to Barcelona, Mexico City to Jakarta, streets are overflowing with angry protests, all shouting one name: Gaza. As the world marks the 2-year anniversary of Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel recently it went, the Gaza war has reignited emotions worldwide. Massive pro-Palestine protests have erupted across continents and they are not peaceful anymore. In Spain, the situation turned chaotic when protesters stormed into Burger King restaurant, shouting slogans against the US company that they accuse of supporting Israel. In the meantime, police in Barcelona had to use water cannons to push the crowd back as flames and smoke filled the entire air. Over in Germany, thousands gathered in Berlin's Alexanderplatz, waving Palestinians' flag and demanding an end to what they call a genocide in Gaza. But the question is, who started it first? Anyways, authorities described this whole protest as the largest in Germany since the start of the war, and things got violent really fast. Police clashed with demonstrators, several were detained, and the US embassy went into lockdown mode. Then comes the Mexico City. Protesters marched towards the US embassy, covering its wall with graffiti and accusing Washington of funding war crimes. Riots police were deployed as tensions spiked outside the heavily guarded building. Well, similar scenes unfolded in Brazil, France, the UK and Indonesia as well, where crowds gathered outside the US and Israeli embassies, chanting "Free Palestine." Now, the real question: what's causing this sudden global explosion of anger? It's the growing outrage over civilian death in Gaza. As Israel continues its military campaign following the renewed fighting with Hamas, more than 40,000 Palestinians have been reported killed or wounded since the war reignited, a figure that is fueling fury across the world. But we also can't deny the truth that there are deaths in Israel as well. Thousands of soldiers have been killed in this never-ending war, and in the meantime, it is Hamas that is showing all the tantrums in just accepting a Gaza ceasefire plan, which is proposed by none other than United States President Mr. Donald Trump. In the meantime, in London, tens of thousands of people filled the tourist spots. Protesters had banners reading "Stop the war" and "Ceasefire now." But here's my question: why are you just asking to stop the war just from Israeli leaders? What about Hamas? In the meantime, the British government called for calm, saying that while protest is a democratic right, violence will not be tolerated. Even in Muslim-majority countries like Turkey, Malaysia and Indonesia, where anger towards Israel runs deep, the protests have taken a new edge. Demonstrators aren't just blaming Israel, they are also blaming the US, accusing Washington of enabling the bloodshed with weapons, money and diplomatic protection as well. And wait, it's not just civilians who are protesting. Across South America and Europe, student groups, labor unions and even some lawmakers have joined the movement, demanding their government should cut military or maybe trade ties with Israel. In Brazil, protesters marched to Congress calling for their president, Mr. Lula, to suspend all the Israeli import immediately. But who would? When it comes to profit, you don't think about the war. Now here analysts say that this new wave of protests show how deeply the Gaza war has divided the whole world, not just along political lines, but moral ones. Western governments are standing by Israel, but their own citizens are turning out in the streets just to say "not in our name." But the question is, who's setting this narrative? Maybe the videos that Hamas is recording of the vulnerable Gazans. Some say that it is scripted just to show the world how brutal Israel really is. They are just making the citizens of Gaza suffer. But in the meantime, behind the doors, you can see Hamas leaders enjoying their lifestyle. Well, for the US, this is an increasingly dangerous situation. US embassies are now under heightened security in more than a dozen countries. Diplomatic sources confirm that American staff is part of Europe and Latin America have been told to avoid any public appearance. The State Department is on high alert, fearing that anti-Israel anger could spill over into anti-US violence. But perhaps the most powerful message came from the streets. Ordinary people chanting for peace while the world's leader continue to argue about politics and power. 2 years after October 7th attack, Gaza remains a battlefield, but now the battle has crossed borders. The battle has come into the hearts and streets of cities around the globe. The world is watching, the anger is spreading, and one thing, maybe question, remains the same. How long before these protests turn into something far bigger than just a call for peace?